And I see we are live. Thanks everyone for your patience. We will get started. Huh?
Kedra Blau?
Hi there.
Can you make one setting change?
Yeah.
Can you make sure that the original sound for musicians is on?
I didn't know how to do that, but
it's top left-hand corner. There'll be a little in-screen.
Oh, I see it.
Yeah.
It says it's on. Noise suppression disabled. Is that what it's supposed to be?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for letting me know. And Dave, I don't need to turn my volume down or anything.
No.
You like mute and handle everything? Okay,
Yep.
Cool. All right. So, welcome to our in-person guests and welcome everyone at home. Thanks for bearing with us while we got started, and I think we are ready to go. So firstly, greetings, Tashi Dele, to all Dharma friends. Geshe hopes that you're all well, and he hopes that you're all happy. Yeah, kogidu. Can you hear Geshe's voice as well as mine? Okay, great. So we are engaging in the activities understanding that we are working towards happiness. And as we work towards happiness, the first thing that we need to comprehend is that the causes of happiness are not something that are outside. The causes of happiness are something that are internal. And not only that, but the causes of our difficulty, the causes of suffering are also something that are inside, internal, not so much external. And another thing that's important to understand, and this is the case whether one might necessarily believe it or not, but that we call the self, and that travels together that we call the self, known as my mind, these actually have within them extraordinarily positive potentials, as well as many beneficial imprints or latencies from our previous positive deeds. And we can also know that we have these positive imprints, these positive karmas within our consciousness if we look at our current situation. When we look at the 6 different types of beings within samsara, we have been born as a human being. And not only that, but we have been born as human being in a relatively stable country, as well as in a situation with enough material means, good friends, and so forth. Are you cold, Emily? Feel free to shut the window. Yeah. Oh, Jason. But is our current good situation stable or not? That's the question. And we can't really say that it's stable. So part of our task then is to put the imprints, the positive potential within our mind in a stable way, and also to develop our resilience through bringing forth our positive mental qualities in a stable way. And of course, this task, right, of placing these positive imprints, of developing these positive mental qualities, this is a task that is in our hand, our responsibility. We can't rely on any external force to do that work for us. But the nice thing is, if we do the work, the combination of this human rebirth, along with this human mind and intelligence, these can allow us to accomplish great things, to accomplish a vast force for happiness.
어따 텔레는 리데와도 셀헬레 지금 요아이스 알랭간조 오까마 카실레
And so in order to develop those qualities, then we want a body and mind that are relaxed and malleable. So we will take a few moments to set our body and mind.
어따 리도 세 rum바스 요네 바 텔레 되게 somebody.
So let's just set the body and mind in a place of stillness and relaxation.
조메비 초와도 노도라서 바데다 노기 띵바야와 노지 바인도 와지서 노도 그야레스.
We can think that any disturbing thoughts, any mental projections that we have, that these are just like clouds in the sky. With the emergence of the sun, they dissolve away.
세모 대피 노카노지다네 조마 그요바 자치모지요 somebody.
The nature of the mind is something that is pure, something that is luminous, and something that is vast like the sky.
조메비 손스강가 바자토바 손스 여보강가 지냐토야 콜니바지요스.
And because of that, the mind has the potential, has the power to set aside any disturbing conceptions or thoughts and to develop wholesome and beneficial thoughts.
로로 소싱이네 든디게 셈 좀마야 보데 아니 대시게 저 샴바도 니지 라소파테다 저도 오만 리바노지 템보치이 삼바지.
So what do we want to do with this mind, with this potential? We want to use those mind's qualities to bring forth positive mental states like love, compassion, and so forth. We want to mix the love and compassion with our consciousness like milk mixed together with water.
대라서 지도 쇼지세 바스이나 했으니 샬라 데모노로지 나보지 사와다야지.
And in order to be able to do that, we ask for the blessings of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas.
tenpa chomden de teji jeba dra chomba yang daba zobe sangye reba dam shabsu denpa dewa sheba jiden jemba jebu duwe kalo gyowa lana meba lada min hamgi tenpa sangye chomden de pejawa shakya tubala chazelo chede kyabsu ji o tenpa chomden de tejen sheba dra chomba yang daba zobe sangye reba dam shabsu denpa dewa sheba jiden jemba jebu duwe kalo gyowa lana meba lada min hamgi tenpa sangye chomden de pejawa shakya tubala chazelo chede kyabsu ji o.
We'll do the short mandala offering. So ji bege jo And the last prayer is the refuge in bodhicitta.
Sonje
Chedam soge chenam lai Jongju bardu dhani kyabsu chi Dagi chenyen gibe sonam ge Drola penjir sangye drobar sho
Sonje
Chedam soge chenam lai Jongju bardu dhani kyabsu chi Dagi chenyen gibe sonam ge Drola penjir sangye drobar sho Chedam sogi chenam lai Jongju bardu dhani kyabsu chi Dagi chenyen gibe sonam ge Drola penjir sangye drobar sho.
뭐냐 다 간서 어가디 겨와드바이나이다 용인 주서 총한테는 가디기나 같이 뭐레스.
So whenever we engage in the practice of accumulating virtue, it's very important to make sure that the activity is complete in the beginning, middle, and end.
어땅아로서 아니 좀에 빌려가서 넘어디 다 뭐게 레지나 롬에 밖으로 공부치 뭐야 아이다 용인 주서
What we'll find is that when we engage in non-virtuous actions, because of the force of our previous habituation to those, the completeness in the beginning, middle, and end come about naturally without particular attention.
다 대타리웠다가 말은 델타와 이나요. 여다 모아가 돼야돼. 저 jetten디치 템보치 야이다.
And we can see when we look at the situation in the world actually so much of what happens, so much of the disturbance and the strife is because of the habituation of beings to what is negative.
azu majana combat tempo me aita yongyo amares.
So the point is, though, when we engage in virtue, because we don't have that same habituation, but we want the virtuous causes, we want the meritorious causes we accumulate to be powerful, we put extra effort into making sure the activity is complete in the beginning, middle, and end.
다 게이쇼게 정인 주에서 겨 아니 세미칸디지나 코프게 아니 세야보 어프게 메소존에 젠디지네 요게야지 이자 콜로 바제시게 세모모지 용요 하네스.
And because when we engage in virtuous activities, we have to bring forth that quality of effort to make sure to engage with the action. Because we have to put some attention to developing that force of action, developing the effort for that course of action. What we'll also experience is that many obstacles arise to our virtuous activities.
대소소 따지다 하고 그래서 당이 들이게 와야 아버지 들이 손을 돈에 되는 손세 아버지 여봐 이나요 로소 뒤에 때는 샤와 많이 받지 내가 몸을 내고
So what we'll find, for example, is we might have a thought, I'm going to go and do some spiritual practice. I'm going to engage in the practice of virtue. But while we have that intention, then something else will come up. Some sort of obstacle will come up, which, prevents us.
그래서 어다 드리지자 다 어다 드리지자 간서 세트 알레포게 류마테게 세코로 그러지 봐 레레지는 좋아야지는 뭐 동보테 그거 알았어.
And it's because those distractions and those obstacles arise that before we engage in spiritual practice, before we engage in the practice of virtue, we take some time to set the mind in a neutral state, in a state of equanimity, right? That's the beginning.
다시 노아 간디 지나야 노아 중에 간디 지나야 노가 세돈 되어야 하래. 세대운 류돈 되어야 하래. 류대운 짜돈 되어야 하이자 짜도 류 주마야 버지서 예서 메톤에 레레데야 이스.
So because what we are practicing with is the mind, the younger sundangen
시 노아 중에 간디 지나요. 노가 세돈 되어야 하래.
Ale. So whatever outside appearance we perceive, this is related to our mind. And we understand that our mind is related to the force of the wind. Sometimes people use the Sanskrit word prana. And we understand that for the prana, for the wind or the energy to flow freely, then we need to have our chakras, our energy channels in an upright state. So part of the first part of practice is establishing that.
짜도 류도 터도 강가다 주마야 버서기 예서 밑에 달리 좀 발레레치네 데야 이스.
So thinking that I am going to put my chakras upright and in this way purify the wind, the prana, as well as the blood and the other elements of my body, place yourself in an upright posture.
리tum보데야 같이 버렸더니 세 가제트더니 그유바데야 같이 버려서 그거랬어.
So we want the body to be upright, but the trick is we also want the mind to be vast, right? We don't want it to be uptight. So we have this kind of upright body, but this open mind.
류강가 짜가는 여보 드네트네 짜강가 박주마도 여보서 요서 말아보지.
And think in this upright posture, the prana, the wind, can move freely through the chakras, the energy channels. And in this way, I cleanse and open up the chakras.
텔라 테네트네 류 짜강가 류주말레거든 레우 그든 요본다고 레렌다고 저서 선바지.
And think that as the wind is able to move freely and unimpeded through these chakras, then the mind becomes relaxed and bright.
대응 세 비운다고 다 가서 가는 너 지금 메트는 미바때 뭐진 걸 저기 선바지.
And think, having prepared myself in that way, then I am going to take this monkey-like mind, and with the stake of mindfulness, I am going to try to focus it single-pointedly on one object.
대응 미바때는 의샬런도 와도 노는 거 아닌 걸 대니 주고 걸 자기 선바지.
So we put other thoughts aside and we think, I'm going to focus my awareness on the inhalation and exhalation of the breath. Breathing in, I'm aware I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I'm aware I'm breathing out.
조매비 초와도 너도 가르 레나 도노 마티네 파자기 선바지.
And think whatever kind of discursive, distracting thoughts that arise, even if unwholesome, I'm not going to worry about that. I will just not pay them any mind.
류슈 첨보 치 루츠마 칭가니 데스관에 드네 봐 텔레지네 봐둬야지. 어레 테마지.
So what Geshe would like you to do now, to completely clear the energy from the body, is to take a deep inhalation, hold it for a moment, and then a deep exhalation.
대용롱기 세 무지게서 좀만 할래야 내지요 선바지.
Having relaxed the mind in this way, then we appreciate that the nature of the mind is pure luminosity.
조조 가디 이나로 소소 렐레 메바도 저와 좀메바 또 좀메바 강가 롤로 세 코로 그로지마인 발은 예리 저도 그 로위 세질레네더니 디가 강에 제건도 선바지.
Think that the disturbing thoughts that arise within my mind, these are just due to habituation. For example, holding some close and others distant. But this attachment and aversion, they are not the nature of my mind. They are adventitious, which means that they can be removed.
강에 춘추이너레 강에 전부 간지지나요 다지 소지된 일이 저도 그 셔바레도 선방하시바.
And we recognize that the problems, right, the unhappy mental states that we experience, whether big or small, so many of them can be traced, this habituation, this biased mind of holding some close and others distant.
로제 요주 든지기 일이 저도 그 세대도 전에 세 돈역은 걸 가지네 터너 손비톤에 다 일이 저도 그 세야 보지 수 있다. 돈역 세야 보지 수 있다.
And so then thinking both myself and others, because we are disturbed due to these attitudes of holding some close and others distant, may we abide in equanimity. How wonderful if we could all abide in equanimity.
제 몸보지 라테네 로아리트 생제 슬다와 이나요 소소 첸디 니에요 아쇼데 노지 이에데 공아지 마도다 다지 좀만도 선바지.
And then using reasoning, for example, how we've been connected to all of them in previous lives, think that every one of all these sentient beings within samsara, of any type of the 6 sentient beings, every single last one is connected to me and is close to me. and then try to gaze upon all those sentient beings with affectionate love.
소속 니 주주 소속 대시 부서 주바 대야가시 아니 이젠다고 조조랜도 선바지 건조간조 니 조조랜도 대시 마로서 대시 부서 주바 대야가더니 시 조조랜도
Think that because we are connected to every last sentient being, each of those sentient beings is a condition for us to accumulate the causes of happiness.
대달 편바 타두지적 근데 대용화는 다 손지가 공부만 마토 발을 다타고 뭐 대의자 동보소서 손지지 공부도 봐야
And think, because I want to benefit all of these sentient beings due to the kindness they have shown me, I cannot benefit them in the best way in my current limited form. Therefore, may I achieve Buddhahood to be able to lead all sentient beings to happiness.
대용 세 가비 뭐니 서세 보와 첨부도 냄비톤에다 손진로야가 로 차송하러 주던 요래 땜부치의
Then with this aspiration of bodhicitta and with a mind of joy, think, in this session, I'm going to study and learn all of the paths and practices that can lead me to that state of full enlightenment.
로야 버튼딜 바차 땜보자 슈바타 가와서 뭐 슈송 선바지
And to be able to have this opportunity to put the imprint for the complete path to enlightenment within my mind is something really wonderful. Develop a feeling of good fortune. So we'll pause here. Would you be more comfortable on the floor? Or are you okay there? You're okay there? All right, all right. Listen. You like sitting there? Okay, yeah. I thought it was cross-legged in a chair, but if it works for you, it's all good. Yeah. Listen.
다 디소마.
Also.
다 땡었더니 다 손질은도야 손질 선발은도야 다 코로스 간디 자펜드 단도는 차송 사진 그러니까 간다고 차송와 요한테 가병은 간도야 이스
So then happily we can, on the basis of the information in this text, be able to traverse the path to developing bodhicitta and to be able to traverse the path to complete Buddhahood.
어담 녀래도 멜로도 데니레스 대하 가세트다 마소서 때모서 그야레스
And so all of these practices in this text of the King of Prayers, they are expressed as prayers or aspirations, right? But aspirations that we want to be able to achieve in a really stable way.
다 손질선바 끝노즈 뭐세하다 다 제모데 코로간디 있으니 덤볼레 동비가를 배우면 대지 반드시 자기야레스
And we can understand that the King of Prayers is actually the outline of how the great Bodhisattva Samantabhadra progressed, right, from the beginning all the way to enlightenment.
느기도와스 다 코로 다 알린데 있어 다 멜로
And so, as we mentioned within the outline, there are 16 prayers, and within this current outline of 16 prayers, we are on the 11th. And so then also within the 11th, the one that we're in, there are 8, and we are on the third of those.
디스시에비 자와 통치에다 콜리츠노라 더고와이 대다 그냥 수요 무제라 로이토주 다주라던 주스.
So for those of you who have the text at home, we are on page 7, and we are the second verse from the bottom. With the strength of understanding, I plunge into the infinite enlightened speech of the Dharma, of all Buddhas and 3 times gone to freedom, who continually turn the wheel of Dharma methods.
다 쪼테 된다 알레 뭐 쪼테 티슐로까지 가는 데 자기와르세는 디스 다 디비 손지 다다이 손지 디비 손지 손지게수 나서 뭐 뭐야라와스
Loso.
아니 다다이 손지 샤차타와 아니 마고베 손지 전에 손지 좀발라서 봐.
So when we say the Buddhas of the 3 times, we understand that we are talking about the Buddhas of the past, of the present, and of the future. And we are thinking about all of them without exception. If we think about the Buddha of the present, we can think of Shakyamuni, for example. And if we think about the Buddha of the future, we can think of Lord Maitreya.
다 코로스고 다 그냥 칼레잖아 쇼지세드 디노아사 야 손지 콤보토네 치쿠코와 노지지 어느 나로 소였던지가
This is also a prayer of aspiration for ourselves, to look at the example of these Buddhas and to think, just as they did, may I be able to bring forth bodhicitta, the wish of enlightenment for all sentient beings, and then accordingly may I achieve enlightenment and turn the wheel of the Dharma, turn the wheel of the teachings for their benefit. Yes. And so we always talk with the aspirational level, right? Like, I want to be able to achieve Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings, but maybe we don't really think about what happens after that. So what is the Buddha's work or job, right? The Buddha exists for others' benefit, and so the main task is, of course, to turn the Dharma wheel to benefit suffering sentient beings. And in terms of the Buddha's speech, it is something that one will engage with, one will study and practice until the very end of samsara. And so, therefore, I want to plunge myself into the enlightened speech of the Dharma and engage with that until I achieve enlightenment. And so there's also a story with this, which we'll get to later. And so I shall experience in one moment such vast activity of all future eons, and I will enter into all eons of the 3 times in but a fraction of a second. So when we speak about the kalpas or the aeons, these are explained according to the arising, abiding, and disintegration of the world. So the formation of the world for 20 eons, the abiding of the world for 20 eons, the degenerating of the world for 20 eons, and the disintegration for 20 eons. And there's also a story connected with that, which we can get to later. So if we think, right, within that immeasurable amount of time from the arising of the world up until now, this is such a fortunate time because it's just a minuscule amount of time where the Buddha is in the world or his teaching is present compared to all of that other time.
So
for however many eons I have left, I will continuously try to engage in the activity. Nganso di kongda chepa karere. Nganso chepa karere, right?
Melozit.
Re. Melomdi. Re. Kechigi dachang jukpaji.
마고비티 토제던 요더니 소지가 쓸은 주 도바 knowledge yo to ba.
Loso. So such vast activity means until the end of this eon to be able to continuously listen to the teachings and to engage in their practice.
So melo me ta gi in wa.
Loso.
Ta tombo tin so wa.
Loso.
Ta ki chi gi da jun ju ba jo sere ta yo ani tndi gi ta knowledge ja chembo ti sa bo tin yo are tin te kanga lo ti se tu ji gi no pa le ka she to ba ji.
But what we want to do is take that vast activity and be able to engage in it in just one short moment. In other words, we want to be able to engage in all of those activities efficiently.
This one, ta de ta shu chi ni ta da dun nga ro du ke che shi yo ma re ten nga le yin na ka che tu me se ge chu de ma che ji no so to ya ani ta de ge ne mo yo was.
So how would that be possible? Well, it's not mentioned explicitly here, but for example, through the practice of Tantra, through the practice of secret mantra, it is said that we can accomplish the merit of 3 immeasurable eons in one short human lifetime. So that's how we could think about experiencing in one moment such vast activity of future eons.
Ta sun jo ta do chi bo cha ja ba yin na pe na sun ji cho den de chu ba nga nga ja ge den da. Ta nga ro do ka nge ka ro na yo.
Loso.
Nga ja de su sha ka de.
Loso.
A ka ste ta ma chi ta nga ro ka nge nyu gi shi na yo. Ta ma chi te pa se ja gi so no to ne. Di ge yo ka che mo bo chu zu bi lo ji ya re.
So many of you will be familiar with the story of the Buddha when he was on the ship. And you know that the Buddha was on a ship with a bunch of merchants who had sort of a lot of material things that they were carrying. But there was a murder on this ship. And the Buddha, in his previous life as a bodhisattva, he came to know of his plan to kill all of the people. And so he thought, in order to prevent him from killing these 500 people, I need to assassinate the would-be murderer. At the time, the Buddha, as a bodhisattva, right, before his enlightenment, he knew that if I do this, this is a very heavy sin. But he thought, I am willing to risk that in order to save the lives of all of these other people. Because of his disregard for the negative consequences to him and the caring for all of those other people, it is actually said that what was normally a negative action became a vast accumulation of merit.
Ta yen je ja cha mo bo chi ge den so li to na bo cha ba was. Ta ten de ne pa la ten no chu ya ka mo bo chu chi ti se chi sa to ya ten de lo ji ya re.
So for the sake of saving the lives of 500 other people, risking one's own future consequence without regard for oneself, because that was such an extraordinarily selfish act, it is said that just through that one activity, the bodhisattva was able to accumulate eons worth of merit.
Ta ten chi re sa ne yo ji ya ji ma la ri pa re ja wa ye sa wa ke do no so ja so la so ba te ta ma che ji ge no la ta lo jong da go nyo le shi ne la sa sun ji sa le pe lo ji ya ra was.
And we also know, right, that with the combination of sutra and tantra, it is possible to, in one lifetime, go from an ordinary being to a completely enlightened state. And we have, as examples of this, Lord Milarepa, Gyawa and Sapa, Kedrup Norsang Gyatso, and so forth.
Ta lo ji te ni ya tu ni bo shi na. Pe na ja sing che to me so bo yi sa yo.
Loso.
Ka sa po chu chu lo tu ye re se ya re. Ten de ka chi le nyama no shi chu mo chi le sho lo ndo bi ka la. Ani shi ge to le bo mo chi ko de wa sa was. Lo tu re se ya.
Xing nang lo la.
Shi jing go la.
Ale loso.
So le bo to ma chu chu ha le we. Ja cha mo bo ji ya re. Ten de thong re se me.
Gyase Tome Sampo.
Ja se to po chu chu lo tu ga.
So there's a story connected with this. We can think of the great bodhisattva Togme Sangpo. Some of you will probably be familiar with him through the text, the 37 Practices of Bodhisattvas. So it was said that from a very young age, Togme Sangpo had a deep concern for other sentient beings. And it was said that when he was just 6 years old, he noticed a lot of small ants, a lot of small insects on the surface of a tree. And he was completely kind of immersed in watching them.
Tani shuke nga shuke chi li sare ta shalon ta ne ko no shi tumo ra was am ba kin ber ji ma ge thone la ani khoro ge dulu ti tunda wa chi ke sa was bo chi shi wa
Loso.
ani ya no lo ya le den pa ma jin sa ya le dulu ma de che ro wa le sus le bares
Bucho Madan.
dulu me ba koro.
So as he was so concerned for the welfare of those ants, one day it became very cold. There was a chill in the air. And he was looking at the ants and thinking that they were suffering. So he took his cloak and he took his pants and tried to cover those ants. And then when he returned home, of course, his parents wondered where all his clothes had gone.
아니 야다 파마도던데 저로 뒤로 가르쳐서 뒤로 신걸 자자였잖아.
And they said, actually, I put all of my clothes on that tree outside.
저 파마니 마다간도 앞에서 들은 버종한 거 차서 걸 걸어 뒤로도 야보치는 이거는 자자 yar스기 말했어.
And when the parents went outside to check, they saw that with his clothing, he had sort of constructed a sort of a barrier to cover all of those ants and to protect them from the cold.
야 바차 좀보세한테 다 던디 지는 상황 아마 바차 뭐 여바이는 던디 지는 왔는 두왔어.
So when we talk about the imprints for positivity, when we talk about the imprints for what is positive ripening, this is an example how even as a very young child, somebody can be so concerned with others.
다니야 대딘 양아도원에서 뭐 보통인데 왔어. 보고 주식간에라 다 내가 미시할 거더니 가고 자와메 발 가고 가시오 자와시할 가고 담아도 왔어.
So when we look at small children, for example, we can see quite clearly how the imprints of previous lives manifest. Some children will naturally like harming or killing insects and things like that. Other children will be very concerned and try to protect them. So this shows the power, right, of those latencies from previous lifetimes.
다 몸무게 더러라요 제와요 아래서 간저 보게 세랄데 키니요스 다지데 할래야 했더니 그 제와 보지다 서머서 뭐라고 잘해야지.
And also, we also see, for example, with in Sera Monastery, Geshe was thinking, so, in many parts of India, there are kind of homeless dogs that are wandering around. And Geshe was saying that some of them are quite ferocious, but at his monastery, there was one that really liked human beings and always wanted to approach them.
코로니 찌는 뭐 먹어요. 코로스 뻔 뭐 먹어요. 찌들 오빠서는 버지 밤에 와서는 할래요. 바시는 할래야지.
So one of the things that is troubling these dogs, right, is they get really terrible body lice, right, due to the climate. And so this one dog, he was so concerned for his friends that he spent most of his time using his mouth to try to remove the lice from the bodies of the other dogs.
다 할래야지. 와서 다 되지요.
So that's kind of the manifestation of those imprints.
다 로진님보다 다 말이다. 맞으는 되는 것이 있어.
And there's also another story with that, but we'll get through some more of the text before we share it.
다 멜로 찌찌 반제다 제 발에 나바디레스.
And so
니마도 뭐 이러다 뭐.
yeah, and so now within the 8 we are going to the 5th.
디스셰바 다 될 멜로 메텔라. 디스은지 수지라 디지도 다 토바스.
And so this one is called being able to see all of the awakened beings in one moment. That's the outline, being able to see all of the enlightened beings in one moment.
디스셰바 머이 생계공 대다 깨지지라 다기다스.
In one instant, I shall see all those awakened beings, past, present, and future, lions among humans.
어다 디스셰바 머이 생계세다 생계된 노지로다 잡으세요 알아왔어.
Yeah, and so we use the example of the lion because we know that the lion is like, as the apex predator, he's like the king of beasts, right?
어다 머이 눈에 다야 잡본다 왕이네 잡보이나 어다 야 수주에 현재 semba 차토야 손지 차토야 수지나 다 머이 생경이네 드레스.
And so amongst all of the different types of human beings we have, those who can achieve bodhicitta and become a bodhisattva, those who can achieve enlightenment and become a Buddha, they are like the lions among human beings.
어때이자 디스셰바 머이 생계세 디스가 다 손지도 손지 semba 다 손지를 지수기 알레스.
So the past, present, and future lions among humans, this is referring once again to the Buddhas, the enlightened beings of the past, present, and future.
대다 깨지지라더니 다기 다 토바쇼지 스드리니 바 토바도 다치는 용마쇼스.
In one instant, I shall see all of those awakened beings. That's making that prayer to be able to see those countless enlightened beings in one moment.
네 소지 쪽에 코로 빈자 주가오 사지 아레스.
군가오.
주가오.
Chungao, ale, loso. So there is a cousin of the Buddha. So Kungao is the name for Ananda in Sanskrit, but there's one called Chungao. And I'm sorry, I don't know the Sanskrit name, but it's another disciple and a relative of the Buddha.
다 코자비 보게라 코트 자본 로키치리 저와스. 다 던디진에 코치를 다 가보시라 지기 와만 연애시라 제로지 로주 지기 와.
Chungao the And so Chungao, he was actually in line. He was part of the Kshatriya caste, and he was in line to become a king. as he got older. And so because of that responsibility, he didn't take much interest in the Dharma, much interest in the teachings.
tene sujil ta zata to ne pa mo chi ya isa tene ni ma chi ta khoro pge ya bo cha ya ge ten da ne su ge ne kanga ta te mon ra wo so chi te mares.
But the Buddha really wanted to help him turn his mind to the spiritual life. So the Buddha, possessing miracle powers, he was able to bring forth a vision of the lower realms. And Chungao saw that.
ta ko wo te ni pa chu chi cha on bo te chu chu chi de was.
Loso.
wo ta tene chi za ani lai ge ne ter jo la lai po do po mo ji ni je wo ya bo chi te mo chi te mares.
But before that, he wanted to show them all the different realms of existence, understanding he didn't want to freak him out due to his small capacity. So he first took him to the Deva realm, right? To the celestial realm, the godlike beings.
ta tere sojil ta te kandis chumbare ta te le to chijla te ne le ngamba sa ba yin nge su ne thoro to so as tin do gre le ya bo che ba yin ta lai le ne la tane lai tane ta ane yu da ta re jar ji ta ki bo chen de chu ya res.
So Chungao said, oh, this is a very nice place, this Deva realm. How do beings be able to come to abide in this sort of heavenly place? And then the Buddha said, every result comes from a cause. So they are born here due to the karma, due to the positive actions that they have engaged in previously. That is how one can be reborn in a realm such as this.
ta tane chu ga wa ta ta te chu ya ko te ga zin ta ngong go kon chom du so no to ne ta lai li she ge so no to ne la ja si kanga pa ja ni ko tane ya ra chu res.
Raudu chungares, ale le apo saya gichedu
Yo nga lai li mi to ko.
And so then, having also seen the lower realms, knowing he did not want to be reborn there, Chungao thought, okay, I want to be a Deva in my next life, and so in order to be a Deva, a celestial being, I need to accumulate a lot of good karma. And so then he went forth from the home life into homelessness, which means he decided to become a monk to accumulate that good karma.
ta ya zo mo le se na ma de ja bo sa de a cho chen ma de a ko sa ra wa che chen nge so no ge yong ge so de she ni la.
Ale, loso.
ko jabol ro thog ro wa
Yeah.
ina jabol de na de pela sa no pe sa ge nga so ne ko te pa ja ne le tan ra tu so as.
So why would Chungao make this decision, right? Because he was going to be next in line to be the king. Well, he thought about, as a king, right, I might be put in a position where I have to protect the country and engage in a lot of non-virtuous actions, maybe even killing to do that. And I don't want to risk that, right? I want to be reborn in the Deva realm. And so thinking about that long-term reward, I will leave aside the comfort of my princely existence, and I will go forth to become a monk.
tani ta ko ge wa ya ge le ya po de ne ta ko pi ya ko ro le du ngin ju ya ma was ina nge so ko ngin ni pan ju ne la nge so ndo ni ma de ne ko la yil so no to ne ke ge ya po de ya res.
So it's really interesting when we talk about Chungao, because normally when we speak about, and the Tibetan word is ngechung, so this is often, ngenjung is often translated as renunciation, but I prefer to call it definite emergence. And so it was a definite emergence, not seeking liberation from the cycle of samsara, but instead seeking liberation from the possibility of a future rebirth in the lower realms, and instead trying to be reborn in the celestial realm.
ani ta ko ge mo sa ko te sel ni te ze pa cha ya bo te bo cha cha wa che te ze ni ba ke ya bo cha cha wi ka la
Loso.
tene son ji ko ro so gi chu kanga ta chu ga ke che ne ma yes
Loso, Chungao.
kanga to no ma yes.
Loso. And so Chungao went forth, he became a monk, and the Buddha then called the senior monks, and he said, just leave Chungao alone. None of you should converse with him. You should just leave him to be by himself. So the Buddha gave that instruction.
tene chu ga sel ke che ba yo ko je re bo ya bo shi ru chi.
And Chungao got really upset because any person that he tried to talk to, they would not reply to him.
ta ka ga ko ro cha ro was nya chi ka ga ke che ka ga so no cho re ro ma che ba res.
And even his own cousin, Ananda, right, who was the Buddha's attendant and a very close relative of his, even when he tried to talk to him, Ananda just completely ignored him. So he became very upset.
tene ki ko ka ga ko ro cha wa yi ta ka ga ke che ta ka re ngal ma kan ge dum bo shi wa chi gi was. ke je bo shi ro chi ma de to no chen te ro chi ma cho ro ngi cha wa re tene cho ngal ma ga wa su ta ta nga ka re chi so res.
So Chungao, he got really, really upset, and he kind of cornered his cousin Kungao, Ananda, and he said, everybody that I talk to is completely ignoring me. Everybody that I talk to is showing me kind of like an angry face. And even you, who are my own cousin, you won't even convert with me. So like, what did I do to deserve this kind of treatment?
네 소지 거로 전에 야 잡아서 가르쳐 내가 잡아지 봐이. 자식 강가 파줘 봐이.
Yeah.
잡아서 강가 파줘 봐이.
Yeah.
나라도 중앙 있어. 근데 당에 가르노스.
He said, who do you think you're talking to? I was next in line to be king. I left all of that aside. I left aside my princely existence. I gave this all up to become a monk and to engage in the practice of virtue. So what have I done that is so terrible that warrants this treatment?
아니 어따트네 라비칼 가고 계시네. 아니 저를 아니 나조 잡아서 왔는데 저를 잡아서 라트 중앙이도 만다와레스.
And Ananda answered him, the definite emergence, the renunciation that most of us have is different from the renunciation that was the cause of you becoming a monk.
당아주 겨와더니 깔래자대야데 코실은 기타는 할레비 뒤자 돈내라 어느 니 반전내라 다 보게 타발은 로야라게 저로 대 말아와스 저로 예수 집어 바꿔 안내라 하이는 로기 소노토네 나저 롱가 가가렌디 와스.
Our paths are different because most of the monks who are here, they entered the homeless life due to a deep dissatisfaction with samsara, an understanding that as long as we remain within samsara, we will be dissatisfied, and bringing forth the renunciation, the definite emergence, thinking, I must leave behind samsara and achieve the state of liberation. And we strive with great diligence towards that. You, on the other hand, have a different type of renunciation. You want to definitely emerge from the danger of the lower realms and have a pleasant samsaric existence in the Deva realm. So therefore, our way of thinking is different and we do not converse so much. So it's that difference in view, which is why others are only having minimal communication with you. So this was actually a deeply compassionate action because Chungao, due to that, saw the limitations of his own motivation to be a monk and his own motivation in renunciation, and it ripened the positive imprint within him for that definite emergence of striving towards complete liberation. So we also understand that renunciation or definite emergence, this is sometimes considered a basic teaching, but actually it is not something that is easy at all. To truly have that mindset of definite emergence, which is a mind truly striving towards liberation, is not such an easy thing. So if we want to bring forth that mind that definitely strives towards liberation, we need to have an understanding of what liberation is. And to develop that curiosity about what liberation is, we need to have a deep comprehension of the faults of samsara, the faults of cyclic existence, and why that is dissatisfying.
And
that's not a goal that is unrelated to ourselves, right? It is because we want a real, stable, and lasting happiness that we want to aim to get out of this cycle of birth and death, out of this cycle of samsara, and achieve that state of moksha or liberation, because then that is when we will experience that stable happiness. So from the point of view of the Buddhist practice, right, there's kind of three spiritual goals. The first is the liberation of a shravaka, of a hearer. The second is the liberation of a pratyeka buddha, of a solitary realizer. And the third is the great Mahayana liberation, whichever of these three we are striving towards, this mind of definite emergence, of renunciation, is an essential prerequisite.
어떤지ren도 서다 가로서 세대 버게 주다 때는 할 레비 또 보차는 당겨라바 노지레 손지도 자션주 삼바스이는 디스가 손지 토지 디지도 다 토그서 와스 디지 뒤지가.
But if we strive towards that sincerely and we train and purify our mind accordingly, that is how these amazing things can happen, like being able to perceive all of the awakened beings in one instant.
어떤지 봤지? 리스마. 멜로 주파데. 아니 또다 대도 건 시이라 단다 원도 저마치비 노다 또 진주스.
And with the power of the illusion-like stabilization, I will constantly engage in their inconceivable activity.
다티 가르친 거 알아서 손지에 놓지 치가를 따와이나 내니가 대만이가 돈에 따토바 놓지 가로소요. 대 놓지 따토바 쇼소.
And with the power of illusion-like stabilization, I will constantly engage in their inconceivable activity. We can see this as a prayer to have the capacity, like the enlightened beings do, to perceive both the ultimate and relative truth of objects in the same moment.
시도 고는라 용거랬더니 간조 땡주 짜침벌에서 아주 자대하대. 대만이데 쇼긴데 노지레서 하레스.
So we're going to come to a further discussion of this later when we move to the other texts. But when we talk about the two truths, relative and ultimate, we can actually come to a point where we perceive them within the same object, just like we see the two sides of one piece of paper.
동반이도 땡주에서나 쇼기때 노지지레 마도 콜로가 때니 요 말이스.
And in the same way, we can also understand through this analogy that dependent arising and emptiness are like two sides of the same paper. They are not something that is separate.
이나에 다 가서 레 돈비깔다 동반이를 따거리 땡주 시고로 요마도 봐. 땡주를 따거리 동반이도 요마도 봐. 다 그걸로 이니발 여보 말레나.
But the thing is, as beginners, if we don't train our minds and familiarize ourselves with the teachings, then when we are trying to meditate on emptiness, we won't be able to contemplate dependent arising. And when we are focusing on dependent arising, we will not be able to meditate upon emptiness.
다치 간디지나 그러고 뭐라 대만이 이래대 대노지 가디나.
통투비야, 상계다고.
미미 치가리나 대만이 이래 요하라 와서 그러모라.
Loso. But it's also important to understand that every dharma, in the sense of phenomena, every single phenomena or every single thing, it has both its relative and ultimate truth.
하고서래 근데지 이제 당한서 tumba 소는 또 녜넬 tumba 초알에서나 땡줄 봐 로이트 도셔 봐. 땡주 녜넬 초알에서나 tumba를 도셔야 돼 뒤쪽 뒤그레스.
And in order to be able to perceive, to create the cause, to be able to perceive both the ultimate and relative truth of any phenomena, that is why in our practice, in our meditation, we need to meditate on emptiness, but also take into account dependent arising. Meditate on dependent arising, but also take into account emptiness.
라마 좀 카피고 근데지 통하게 되라. 근데 잡에 하고서 강강에 봐줘야 그잖아. 대시 강에 대하게 내서 대신 봐 통하게 될 할랜드 손질 대바만도 앞이야 지그레스.
So Lama Tsongkhapa, understanding the importance of both the emptiness and dependent arising, the union of this, and how the Buddha's teaching expressed this, he wrote this in praise of dependent arising as the supreme praise to the Buddha.
동반이 가만에 통사할 때는 동반이 땡줄 도시야 봐. 땡주 동반을 도시야 봐. 디디전에 통화 있었더니 할래봐
So when Lama Tsongkhapa composed this text, of course, previously he had developed some experience of emptiness, and previously he had developed some experience of dependent arising. But seeing the inseparability of dependent arising and emptiness, that was something that he was experiencing for the first time. And understanding that the Buddha's teaching pointed this out, he wrote this praise to the Buddha.
디디저게 와서 손지나 늦었다 위치 그녀서 되네. 단에 지체삼도 해서 단에 수야 데려왔어.
And it's not easy, right, to penetrate this truth. And this is one of the reasons that after the Buddha first became enlightened, he remained silent. And he said, I have discovered this dharma, this truth, which is like amrita, which is like nectar, but there are no disciples suitable to receive it.
다 손지게 덴바니라 따와 디체 대동 지마타와 덴바티비 동아 롱지 지메바 지마노지 치카르 동아이나 디지도 동토고 야레스.
So the Buddha understands on the basis of the two truths that relative phenomena, relative objects, right? That appearance of true existence is just like a magician's illusion, right? It is not something. It is like a mirage, an illusion. It is not something that is really there.
다 렌데
Are you guys having problems here?
Hey, Kedripla, your microphone has seemed to have gone offline.
Oh dear.
We hear you through Geshe's pickup, but that means it's quite quiet.
I wonder. I did plug these in, but I noticed when I plugged them in, the light did not go on. So maybe they didn't charge correctly. Shall plug in this other?
I guess so.
Yeah. I think I'll be okay, but I may ask for your help. Yeah. Sorry about that, folks.
메주소.
Yeah, mesos. Can people hear me now?
Not really.
Not really. Okay, let me adjust this. Just figure out.
Sorry, everyone.
I can't. Yes, I apologize for that. Let me just see what's here. So I've plugged in the Yeti. Can you hear me
That
now?
works. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I'm so glad we have backups for stuff, actually.
Mhm.
So what we'll have to do is just move this a little bit forward. We'll move this a bit forward and put the microphone close to me. Okay.
Oh, that's going to be. Can you make it closer?
Yeah.
Because it's just really echoey from that distance.
Yes, no, we will have to make it closer. I don't know how to.
Oh dear.
All right. Is that working now? Can you hear me
Yep.
all right?
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
All right. Sorry about
Okay.
that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. And can you see us all right still? It's actually maybe even a better visual image, I noticed now. Okay. All right. Where were we? I've totally lost track. Anyways, we'll figure it out. Not so call it. Geshe knows where we are. So no. Yeah. So we are now going on to the next prayer. Los. And so this next prayer is the prayer to be able to establish countless Buddha fields. In other words, countless Pure Lands. I shall manifest upon one single atom the array of Pure Lands, present, past, and future. Likewise, I shall enter the array of Buddha fields in every direction without exception. So this is a prayer to be able to manifest that vast array of Pure Lands and to enter them, and also to be able to perceive or see them. Namka, loso. So in every direction without exception, Geshe says we can think of this as space. There is no place that space does not penetrate. So we imagine that completely filling up all of the realms. Every single one of those becomes a Buddha field or a Pure Land.
다 된다 거인의 요다 천에 매봐 다 거인의 차소파 매봐서는 다 이거네 주도 발시 저 완전 같이 생각했어.
And this actually points at an extraordinary transformation, that all of these ordinary or samsaric abodes, those are completely purified, cleared away, and they all become Pure Lands, Buddha fields, full of enlightened beings.
네. 다음은 던지기 손지기 시간 같은 저 돈을 가려가 가면 다 저기도 할래. 고용 맛이 다 담아디다.
Loso. Is the sound all right, everybody? Okay, I see Dave sort of like, but can you hear what I'm saying though? Okay, that's the main thing. I don't mean perfect, I just mean okay. Loso.
다 고용 맛이 지대 드라마나 대다른 거 소자 콜로 그냥 엔디 봐라. 대시다 되게 뭐 그저 주도 다 주고.
That's right?
하면로 제바들.
Loso.
And
so now going to the next verse, we are on the third verse on page 8. I shall enter the very presence of all my guides, those lights of the world who are yet to appear, those sequentially turning the wheels of complete awakening, those who reveal nirvana, final perfect peace.
다다다 아니 나도 지라 아니 단다 변화 전지 삼바타 제도 레요 와서 여기서만요 전지 삼바타 도와야지 전지 삼바타를 단 누구 손지 삼 패기로 와서
로스
고용 마신 지대 도마노 코로스 또 무슨 지그래 손지는 지지 콜로코 그래 지지 콜로코네 때는 양엘인디비 자발라서 반 자바 쭈녀라서 뭐 때베로 왔어
Zeba chunila sobasena konso semshen jendag nyangen le depe droya zeba chuni din so yere. So this is actually explaining how the enlightened beings first achieve Buddhahood, and then on that basis they engage in the practice of turning the wheel of Dharma for complete awakening, and then they manifest their 12 various types of deeds and so forth to lead all of those beings to nirvana or liberation. So those 12 deeds, Sangye Chatsangwadin so chuni yere. So it said every enlightened being or Buddha will manifest these 12 deeds. So it's for us to be able to perceive and come into contact with these 12 deeds, and also to be able to achieve the state of Buddhahood or enlightenment so that we can manifest them ourselves. And so then within this section of 16, we are on number 11. Yeah, so and then there's another section of 12 that are coming. So yes, we still have quite a lot of the text to cover. So then now Geshe would like, if he can, to touch upon a couple of verses of the text in praise of dependent arising. So for those of you following along, we are on verse number 12. Whereas one sees the opposite, since there can be no function in emptiness, nor emptiness in what has functions, one falls into a dreadful abyss you maintain. Yeah. So the opposite here, if we talk about the opposite of lack of inherent existence, we're talking about inherent existence or true existence, right? Yeah. So this is actually pointing at an argument made by the great Panditas Nagarjuna and Chandrakirti. And it's basically saying that if you are holding to inherent existence, if you say that things are truly existent, then functions cannot be maintained. In other words, the doer of the action itself, the accumulation of karma, these actually cannot operate if you're holding to a view of inherent existence.
This one, what a kasi less a kid to the Devan Yoki to the kasi Yaba Yina.
Oh, j'ai.
Hakosara, and a Ruji to your Ramato, and Ruji Meba Teumare, the Lavainas.
Again.
I was a mean to go to the one you kid to the Yovaina.
Loso, loso.
And Ruji turned over res.
Yeah.
Ruji Tabani, Ren over res.
Ale, loso.
How was Ruji Meban, Yatogumares, Lavainas?
Ale, loso, dene? Dene?
Dene, Tanin, Rudoveres.
So it's also pointing out to the danger that if we say that beings, that actions and so forth are inherently existent, this leaves us no place to go philosophically other than one of the two extremes, the extreme of existence or the extreme of annihilation.
Tanjoaina, Akosino, Padidawa to Korosu to Tanjoara, Tanji Labaina, Rujiji Turna, Chawakanga, Jatogomares.
Loso.
Mala.
Yeah.
Amarujiba Korosoge, Rujiji Hakusu.
Mena?
Mena, Shawakanga Jatogomares.
So there's so then Geshe is explaining that we're actually pointing to a philosophical disagreement between the two different types of proponents of the Madhyamika or middle way philosophy. So the Prasangikas, the consequentialists, are saying that if you hold on even to a little bit of saying that things are self-existent or inherently existent, functionality and so forth of karma, this won't make sense. You fall into extreme. But the Sautantrikas, right, the other middle way school, they're saying actually that's not the case. It's actually the other way around. If you're saying that there's no element of existent at all, then you are just missing functionality.
This one, oh, that tend on Ganzo Garcia, Senate Tanjo as Jacena, on a Ruji, that Meba, Geshe Tobaina, Chikanga Yabato with it. On the Mena Ruji, but with Jabaina.
So the Prasangikas are really holding this view in terms of if you are saying that things do not exist inherently, that there is no inherent existence, that is what makes the functioning, the arising and falling of phenomena and so forth possible. If you're holding on to some element of inherent existence, right, then all of that functionality is no longer possible.
That what do do us? That Ruji Tabazi Janija in
Yeah. And so if you are holding on to even an element of inherent existence, then you will plunge into that abyss. So that abyss, right, is the view of those two extremes of existence or annihilation. And if we are holding to one of those two extremes, either existence or annihilation, we'll continue to circle within samsara. We won't be able to get ourselves free. Yeah. And to plunge into a frightening abyss. So Geshe said plunge is like, it's like literally like jumping off a cliff into a canyon. That's kind of the image that is being given here. Yeah. Loso. Loso. Tene? Titam jawa karidu.
Koros ringo patendo vaina. That did.
Loso.
You better tongue the constitution.
Loso. Yes. So it is said that animals like yaks and oxen, for example. Oh, he didn't say yaks. Sorry. Oxen. I think he said oxen and something else. Anyways, animals, let's just say yaks for fun. Like yaks and oxen, when they are walking along somewhere, they might not know the name abyss, right? But when they see the edge of a cliff approaching in the distance, they know that abyss is there, right? And they will stop walking in that direction.
근데 지기사 코로스는 너가 셀샤에 하래. 스투바티 셀샤는 코로스 얘기지와 마사로 그랬대.
So that means that even though they might not know the name abyss or empty space, that concept, right? That vision of the abyss, that is something that can come forth in their mind.
어때이자 너케 미달로이다 마샤요 너가로이다 샤와요. 스타트 바노라.
So for the cows and so he said horses, that's what he said, not yaks. For the cows and the horses, they might not have the word emptiness or abyss arise in the mind, but the image of emptiness or abyss can still come.
어다 던지지다 치카리나 로지지 트바요 말에. 아니 로지지 트바 가세 요나 로지지 요로 그래. 로지지 요나 로마 요 말에. 아라이 내가 말해요. 로지지 요나 아니 로마 요로 그래.
Ale.
로마.
Loso.
로이 치치 좀 만들어요.
And also we understand that if we say that things are inherently existent, this means that they have to be independent. In other words, independent of causes. But we also know that that is not the case.
페나 로마 메세리 디파송. 시송.
Shisum.
신.
Shing. Oh, loso.
디파선 들이 야로니 자가이나.
Yeah.
시송 세나 송
Distinire. Oh, sum. Yeah.
자가이나.
Yeah.
지면은 콘도 강가리로 그러와스.
Okay. Yeah.
하고서 데이터 컨트롤 다 대발라 로야 말했어. 아치치를 맞대나.
Loso. So Geshe is using an example. It's like if you want to have sticks sort of pointing upwards, right? You if you want to have a bundle of sticks pointing upwards, you need at least 3, because when you have 3 sticks, they can sort of support each other and hold it up. But if you just pull one away, they will collapse. So it's in the same way, like things cannot be independent because they need to have the causes coming together to sustain themselves.
어따페텐 로지치 가레이나 지질 땜바지마도 아까서는 로지치요바 로마요바 지좀 만들.
So when we think about that analogy, right, it makes sense that any functional thing or phenomena that we think of, it can't just abide effectively by itself. It has to arise due to the coming together of the particular causes. So how does that benefit our practice? How does knowing this benefit our practice? Loso.
칼라 듣는 단내선 담마다요나레 가리나 예지라 때네 용거도 마도 로지질레는 와스
Loso.
로지질레는 저진거는 로아라고 질레 가르와스
Ale.
칼라데
Oh, yeah.
니자 송와스
Yeah. In society.
테마도
Loso.
데 로지지 요나 하고서 예지라 마테니 고요 가르와스
So how can we understand that everything is a dependent arising? Well, think about your food for the day. You know that the food that you're going to eat for the day, it takes that preparation of assembling the correct ingredients, having the vessel and the plate to put in. It doesn't just arise in and of itself, right? It's not like it magically appears from the table. So even for something as simple as a meal, many different causes and conditions need to be assembled together.
나로서 사이네레 두로이네레 예지 뭐뭐 지금 프로젝트 칼레자네레다 텔라테네 티치치라 슈데 마도 롱와치 텐데 메두아.
So in this way, we understand that actually any phenomena whatsoever, it can't just arise magically or independently in and of itself. Everything from the food we eat to the clothes we wear and so forth, this arises due to a complex set of intertwined causes and conditions. Therefore, there is no independent existence. Yeah. And if we also understand that there is no independent self-arisen existence, then this idea of holding to ourself as somehow exceptional, somehow independent, somehow special, that also stops making sense. Yeah. And if we understand how we abide only connected with others, then the thought of harming somebody else in light of understanding that interconnectedness, that will become unthinkable. So these are the practical applications of that philosophy, right, that Geshe was giving. So therefore, because every temporary happiness, every ultimate happiness, that phenomena that we experience has to arise not independently, but with a coming together of causes and conditions, we understand that every temporary and every ultimate happiness that we could possibly experience is connected to others. So when we understand this, we understand that these like philosophical sounding ideas like emptiness and dependent arising, Yep. We understand that through that understanding of emptiness and dependent arising, we improve our relationships with others, and we also create a foundation for happiness. So when we think about dependent arising, right, we don't just need to necessarily think about the dependent arising that lead to other external objects. We can also think about the dependence arisings in our own lives, the dependent arisings that relate to us. So having gotten to that point, then we will leave aside our discussion of the texts for now. What Geshe would like to do is to recite the dedication prayers, and then people who need to get on with their day feel free. But after that, we may have some question and answer. We may have a story or two for those who were able to stick around for the last half hour. But of course, before the story, Geshe wants to give the opportunity for folks to ask questions. So that is what we will do first. Jambel Pao Jidar Gyambad Kundu Zambo Deyan Dejin Deda Gungi Jesu Dalo Chir Gewa Dida Tamche Rabdu Mo Dusun Shebe Gewa Tamje Gir Ngowa Ganla Chodu Ngabade Dagi Gewe Tsawa Dikun Kya Azambu Jeji Radu Mo. Through the merits that we've accumulated together today, we dedicate these to the cause of all sentient beings being able to bring forth love and compassion within their minds. Through these merits, may any imbalances of the elements causing disasters, may the wars and diseases in this world be completely cleared away. All right, everybody. So we will take some questions, if there are any.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, it's Yolisa. I just wanted to ask a quick question about the quality of renunciation.
Yeah.
So when you withdraw actions based on wanting to, not go into the lower realms, like, because I had a situation where I kind of like, got a kind of vision for myself of what the lower realms look like and really wanted to withdraw from, eating meat and so I became a vegetarian. And I just was wondering that quality of renunciation is that a form of renunciation? And if it is, like, what kind, like, is there a deeper form of renunciation that needs to happen in my spiritual life? That's the question I have.
Yes, no, I think that's a really good question, Yolisa, because that ties to the story too that Geshe told. Nganzo di ngenjung seria di rwa, nganzo ngoma chungao gi drung di chik yore rwa. Yolisa sena ko nima chik milam yena chik tona dabo yena ko nyelwa di dabo chik ton son rwa. Dene dela tene ko te she son, ane nga digbasai te nyungru tangos. Dene dela tene ko sha pangsa redua, dene sha megi kala kyang kyang sagi redua. Dene ko sena di ngechung ngene rebes ngechung dang dabo chikres ane ngechung di tes yarge tango chungna kandes chikso gresa. So it's not actual renunciation or definite emergence in the textbook sense, but it's still something that was really beneficial for you. So something similar to renunciation.
So
when we talk about renunciation or definite emergence in a true sense, it's a mind that thinks whether I'm born in the lower realms or whether I'm reborn in the pinnacle of the Deva realms, of the celestial realms, there is still no lasting satisfaction. There is no true happiness to be found within samsara. I must get out. That's that classic kind of renunciation.
And
also, just to be clear, when we speak about samsara, we're not talking about a place, really. Samsara is more like a way of being driven by karma and affliction. As long as we remain under karma and affliction, we are within samsara.
Yeah.
So we understand that as long as we remain within samsara and depending upon the balance of our wholesome and unwholesome actions, we go from lifetime to lifetime. But some places might be better than others, right? Just like some clothes might be nicer than other clothes, or one house might be nicer than another house, but we're still just changing the clothes. We're still just moving from one house to another, right? We're not really solving that problem of the self. So that mind of renunciation understands that as long as we remain within samsara, within an existence driven by karma and affliction, whether relatively fortunate or unfortunate, we do not have true freedom. And so renunciation thinks, I must get out of samsara. I must free myself from karma and affliction. So there is no lasting happiness to be found until one can break away from karma and affliction. Dene Yolisa seria dirwa ngensong samlo tangne dene sha pangya di ngenchung menana di kareres like dungen samlo tangne gi parpangya ale karinsana korwa le tarpa tobya gi gyu cha tu gyo mare rwa jirebe
통요 말was.
Loso. Yeah. Yeah, So I was just asking about the second part of Yolisa's questions, like how would I deepen that? So definitely this is a good thing, right? Seeing the consequences of an action and then refraining from it accordingly. But if Yolisa wanted to deepen the renunciation, right, behind that practice, what she would have to think is this is an activity that is driving my existence within samsara. Within samsara are only difficulties or faults. Therefore, I must free myself from samsara. That would be the next step.
So that that's all then that she was malado my
So for true renunciation, thinking like I don't want to do this negative action because I want to have a human rebirth or I want to have a rebirth in the Deva realms, that's not renunciation or definite emergence in the fullest sense. Yeah. Yeah. And so we're saying only for that case, right? Only to avoid that unpleasant rebirth. If that's why you're refraining, it's not true renunciation. Yeah, but that's not saying we're not taking that point into the picture, right? Because until we actually achieve liberation, until we actually achieve enlightenment, we have to get reborn, right? And we want that to be in the human or celestial realm so we can progress spiritually, but that shouldn't be the main thrust here. Did that answer your question, Yolisa?
Yeah, that was very thorough. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Dave, go ahead. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yulisa's question and the answer made me have a sense of with full renunciation and completely realizing renunciation, one would have realized absence of inherent existence, and therefore there would be nothing to grasp at. The mind in the state of freedom from samsara would be grasping at nothing. In which case, how does such a mind engage with sentient beings?
Yes, okay. Yolisa gi tuadi samlo tangne roa dene nganzo nginjung ngune yuna roa nganzo rangjing gi drupa di pango gire duas rangjing gi drupa gi tawa di pangna roa dene zinya chikyong yomar es zinya chikyang metsang dene lelapo pang tu gire dus ngechun kie tu gire duas ine kandes lagore zikpa di zinya chikyang menana dene semchen la juya konso kandes ropache tu gire esa
me chato ni Picabo de Yashabala, any major Rojimato. Bokumaras, Amarujiba, the sets of Batani Law, Toki, Momoyar, Corosol, in the Yares.
So Geshe wanted to say that actually, just to address the first part of the question, in order to be able to bring forth renunciation or definite emergence, we don't need to have refuted the view of inherent existence. And we know this is the case because not just prasangakas can enter the path to liberation, but also holders of the mind-only school, also holders of the Great Exposition School, and holders of the Sutra School, they all can too. So they all are able to develop a genuine renunciation, certainly enough to get on the path. Yes. However, if our renunciation or definite emergence is informed by an understanding of how things lack inherent existence, that will certainly be an assisting factor that makes that renunciation really rich. Yeah. So also when we say we understand inherent existence and there's nothing to grasp at, that means that we are not grasping at the true existence of those sentient beings who may be suffering. But that doesn't mean that those sentient beings who may be suffering are not there at all, right? It just means that that grasping at them existing inherently isn't there. So this certainly leaves room, right, for engaging with sentient beings and trying to help them, certainly. In fact, it is said that the one who has come to this understanding of a lack of inherent existence, he is actually more empowered and more effectively able to benefit those beings.
니네를 로지 매바지 연발로 코로스 관계 로지 예바 소노토네테니 강행연에 데리도 소노토고 야레스.
Whereas if the practitioner, if he or she is holding that beings are inherently existent, right, then maybe grasping at the problem or grasping at the difficulty of the situation, this actually impedes them from being able to help in the most effective way.
Okay.
So that's why we say the non-referential compassion is the most powerful type of compassion. And so when we say non-referential compassion, right, this has the connotation of the compassion for that sentient being, while understanding that they do not exist inherently. Yeah, they're empty of inherent existence. And so there are different types of great compassion, mahakaruna, and so the strongest of these is this non-referential great compassion. And so when informed by that understanding of emptiness, by that understanding that things lack inherent existence, our definite emergence, our renunciation becomes more powerful. Our compassion similarly also becomes more powerful. So, but Geshe said that Dave's question was interesting too, because when they talk about understanding lack of inherent existence, does that mean that grasping is completely eliminated or not? Actually, different debate textbooks have different views of this. So this is quite an interesting topic that's debated at the monastery.
Yeah. So the
Sakyas, for example, if you know the text parting from the four attachments, it says that yes. If you are grasping, you have not understood the view. If you are grasping, you have not understood the view. But the Gelugpas might not be holding that. Yeah. The Gelugpas would say that it's not all grasping which shows you have not realized the view. It's a particular type of grasping. If you are still grasping at true existence or inherent existence, that indicates you have not realized the view. Yeah. So it's very much kind of like a precise thing instead of an all-encompassing rule. So a big difference there. Yeah. Does anyone else have a question? Also, you guys, please ask a question. Yes, go ahead.
So last time we had a discussion that if things are not going your way, and then there is anxiety, and you find a way to deal with it. Today my question is, when things are not going someone else's way, they have certain expectations from you.
Yes.
To work according to them.
Mm-hmm.
And when that is not happening, there is a lot of anxiety coming from not meeting somebody else's expectations.
Yes.
And that time, how do you deal with this situation?
So did everybody hear the question? I think, yeah, no, with this microphone. So I'm just going to briefly kind of restate the question again. So we had a question. What's your name? Prachi. We had a question from Prachi, I think it was last week, right? Where she asked about how to deal with the anxiety of that uncertainty where things don't seem to be going your way. So this is kind of related to her previous question, but often others in our lives, we have certain responsibilities to them, and we have to meet their expectations. So if for some reason we're falling short or we're not able to always meet the expectations of others, this can also create some anxiety or uneasiness. So how to deal with that? Is that right, Prachi? Yeah. Okay. Nganso di dunjong ngema kochiwa tanswa rwa nganso perna maumba denden mepa rwa nganso mikyu drub tubia denden mendues dene dela tene tsagi tsigi chagi yores di kande chik mepa sogo rwa dene dering morangi chua di samsam nganso mi jenda gichik perna nganso pombo yena nganso leche pa yena nganso pombo di rwa korang mikyu mambo chik yores dene korangi mikyu dan samlo tang tang drub mitumna kot samsam lung langire duas dene di kola samsam tsagi tsigi chik yores dene di kola kande samlo tanguresa
미스 소속에
mare 미젠다 di nganso pombo perna nganso leche pa yena nganso pombo di rwa ko mikyu dabo chik yores ine samsam nganso drub tu gimen duas dene ko lung langires dene nganso tsagi tsigi charwa nyoja di kandes meba sogasa
맹아로서 에
제-
알아서 자게 자야 돼 매번 간지 좀
yeah leche pa karin pombo di drub tu gimare ko lung langire rwa
미 다때 야 알아서 자게 간지 매번 그세 와라 콘 나만도니 세기와를
exactly yeah So basically, Geshe is just confirming that you're saying that, like, because you're not able to meet the expectation, for example, of your boss or whatever, he's going to be disappointed and upset, right? Or she's going to be disappointed and upset, and that makes you feel anxious. Is it something like that? Yeah, dire.
다 된다면 다 요하나 왔어 아니 다때 소속에서 재민요래 전에 야가요나 뒤쪽 제가 요나 재민요래 제야 요나 렌데게 내서 손을 돈에 야가요나 데레마도 자기 책에서 할 표도 무료서 맞게 먹을 하래
So definitely you want to have the idea that being anxious about this is not going to help the situation. So I need to try something else. So what else can you try? You can try patience, for example, being patient with whatever their reaction might be as an alternative way to deal with that. Or you can also think about cause and effect, right? How results come from all those complex causes.
하고서 어다 걸어게 손스데 만디바데 걸어게 달라더니 뭐야 마도 저러서서 야기 뭐야 왔어
And also to understand that your inability to meet his or her expectations, you're not the only factor in play here. Also their own karma, whether they have the karma to have all of the people in the workplace meeting their expectations, that's also part of it. So you can make the argument that part of the expectations not being met are due to the boss's own karma, in other words.
다 변보야 보이는 소생이네 다그 요나 다 배제도 대 문으로서 자기세계도 배도 무료서 맞다 때때 먹을
So you have to kind of free yourself that, of course, you know, you're going to do your best according to your competency to apply whatever kind of method to meet those goals. But when the goals are not met, you sometimes understand that it's not necessarily something that's only to do with you. And that could maybe reduce the anxiety.
좋아 말해
그래서,
야다다다 남다
So yeah, it's really just about shifting, using a method to kind of shift your way of thinking about the particular problem.
말해 이렇게 소소를 걸어다 비켜져야 본다고 시야 배도 요나 들이지 않아 소소 자기세계도 배도
And also, you know, certainly being nervous when you're talking to your boss about it, that's not going to make him or her happier with you, right? So when you get anxious, that can cause them to be anxious. So just try to remain relaxed about the situation, understanding those things.
나도 뭐 뒤지 않아 왔어 기에 대해서 뭐라 잡았지
Listen.
기에 되게 또 자이 봐 그런 체크해 줘 하나 왔어
Yeah, 하거든.
아니 그게 내려서 야 이제 뭐지 기에 되게 체크해 봐서 왔어
Sorry. Sorry. If people are talking, please mute yourself. Yeah.
지금 말해 뭐지 기에 되게 자이 보마다 보마다 좋아서 왔어
하거든. Yeah.
아니 기
Yeah.
아니 기에까지는 못 봐래 지지에서 그 보시기 하러
So Geshe was just telling the story. He's told it many times before. We'll just give it really briefly, right? Of the teacher and the student. And actually the teacher or the guru, he was kind of like quite a difficult person. And he was very attached to a certain earthenware pot that I think the student was using to fetch water. And then one day, right, the student broke the pot accidentally. And the teacher got very angry, but he said to the teacher, you're always saying that all phenomena are impermanent. Therefore, the water pot is also impermanent.
그래서 조치사서 기계를 루사라야 말했어.
알레로스.
그래서 되네.
Yeah.
기계를 다 개발치네라.
Yeah.
Diji kanga muta bare.
Ale, loso.
Bare dala. Ngaroni pombate muta bare.
So the student was very clever. When the teacher asked about the pot, he didn't answer right away. He said, would you say that all compounded phenomena are impermanent? Therefore, you're saying that do all phenomena that come from causes, are they necessarily impermanent? And then the teacher said, yes. Oh.
So
then he said, well, our pot is also impermanent, therefore it broke. Yeah. Yeah. So then the teacher, the guru could not get angry with the chela, with the student, right? So generally, like sometimes dealing with these difficult interactions, right? It's just about finding an effective method to do that. Yeah. Neba. Oh, and so we can think, for example, also about medical practitioners, for example, nurses who are dealing with very difficult patients. And we sometimes know that when people are really sick, right, when they're experiencing a lot of pain, they can become quite unpleasant, like maybe even abusive. But the nurses, they are able to stay and try to help the patient regardless of that abuse. So how do they do that? Well, Geshe was saying a lot of nurses were saying, well, how would I feel if this patient was my daughter or my son? How would I feel if this patient was my mother or my father? And by just changing their way of thinking about it a little bit, they're able to do their job. No, yeah. And so this kind of came about as a discussion because people were asking some of the medical practitioners, right, the nurses, like, how do you deal with these people that are so upset, but also like so abusive? Like, how are you still able to do your job? And a lot of the nurses explained that they try to like change their view about how they see them. And not only that, but the nurses said when they changed their way of thinking about the patient, that also somehow changed their interactions. And because they were interacting with the patient differently, the patient became more peaceful, less aggravated, less abusive. Yeah. Yeah. So how did you get all of your patients to be so kind of like agreeable and peaceful? And because I said, what if this was my mother? What if this was my father? And I treated them accordingly. And then that reciprocated, right? That created the shift. So also when dealing with somebody's expectations that are not met, if we approach them in a mode of kind of peacefulness, of understanding, they might reciprocate, right? Their reaction might be different than what we would have expected. Listen. So I think that answered the question here from Prachi. Is there anyone else who'd like to ask a question? Or Dave, is there anything on the Facebook channel? No, nothing on the Facebook channel. Okay. So then we'll end. Sorry? Sorry. So Geshe will end with a short story then. 2-3 minutes. Not an elaborate story, a short one. Papa. Pala. So this is a story of many eons ago, before the Buddha was enlightened, when he was still a bodhisattva, and he was a father who had a child. So, ale, korang palagi pugudi, and the son was actually very special. He had in previous lifetimes meditated on bodhicitta, and he actually brought forth that bodhicitta and became enlightened, right? The son of the Buddha. And so the Buddha at that time, right, this is before he was enlightened. He was an ordinary being that was just the father of this extraordinary child. Rinchen Ningbo. Yeah, and so the name of the boy was Rinchen Ningbo. Yes. And so after his enlightenment, he was able to preach and turn the wheel of the Dharma. And it was said that even in the high society, like many of the children of the king, based upon his teachings, they were able to be freed and achieve liberation. Yeah. And so one of the practices that Rinchen Ningpo had of his students was after they achieved enlightenment, he said that now that you have achieved Buddhahood, what type of Pure Land, what type of Buddha field are you going to manifest? And he asked them all to make various aspirations. And so they would talk not only about the manifestation of the Pure Lands, but also the various world systems that they would enter to bring benefit to sentient beings. Ale, loso. Ale, damka chegen, damka chemi tubgen ni. Ale. And so when it came time to promise which world system they were going to go to turn the Dharma wheel, after all of the students had made a promise, there were 2 world systems that were left over. And one of those world systems was the world system where our world, where Zambuling is located. And the other world is a world system where it is said that Maitreya is going to arise. And so what happened was Rinchen Ningpo's father, who remember was Buddha Shakyamuni in a previous life, he approached him and he said to Rinchen Ningpo, when I achieve my enlightenment, I promise to turn the wheel of the Dharma in that place known as Zambuling. In other words, in this world system. Yeah. Right? And at that time, right, because of the father's extraordinary aspiration to achieve enlightenment and go to that place where no one else wanted to go, there was a beautiful hymn of praise that was spoken by the Buddha Rinchen Ningpo as well as all of his enlightened disciples. So why is this the case? Because Buddha Shakyamuni promised to come to a difficult world system during a difficult yuga or period of time when beings possess especially strong afflictions, and he would appear there for their benefit. Oh, yeah. And similarly, after that praise, right, then the being who become Maitreya made a promise to be reborn in another difficult realm. And this is another reason that it is said that from amongst the 1,000+ Buddhas of this fortunate eon, the kindness of Shakyamuni is particularly extraordinary. It's partly because he agreed to be reborn in this difficult world system during these difficult times. Yeah. So then he had a name, right? The name was bestowed upon the father who became the future Buddha Shakyamuni. Yeah. And so we'll share more details of the story of that particular rebirth of the being who became the Buddha next time. And also we can understand how even though on the level of appearances, right, this time which we abide and this world that we abide in is a particularly difficult time. From the point of view of spiritual practice, is actually a very excellent time.
This one, what that the Latin got watch the power chendroya the time, so to us.
And when we think about that, we can bring forth an attitude understanding how great these conditions are for spiritual practice, and also bring forth some courage and some joy in our cultivation.
Yeah, this.
So thank you very much. We shall leave it right on time today. Just a reminder, Geshe and I are going to be gone for 2 weeks, but next week on Sunday, Michelle Shaban, who is an amazing person, Deki Lee mentioned a little bit about her at the beginning. She is going to give a talk to our community, so please do come for that. We are going to be back after those 2 weeks with the Sunday teaching, also a special event for Chudral Duchen. We'll have Bodhisattva vows and precepts, and also look for the upcoming details of Khensu Rinpoche's visit. Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Yeah,
Thank you. Bye, Geshe.
yeah.
I'm waving at you. Bye.
Thank you very much. Good to see you, Minoshi.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Chi-chi.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.